We begin with Trump DOJ's in crisis, though. And remember, much of what Donald Trump says and admits in public involves Watergate-level confessions if they were only in private. And he has turned that into something of a kind of political propaganda art, because what he has already admitted is a scandal for the DOJ in pursuing his perceived foes. Now we have more detail about the DOJ faced with the crisis of Trump's own making. After their own career prosecutors did not find evidence to indict Jim Comey, they are still considering whether to indict James Comey, of course, the former FBI director. And there's new details about all of this. The Washington Post reports prosecutors have already presented the new U.S. attorney with a written record about why there was not evidence to charge Comey in the first place, meaning they already looked into this and there isn't a case. Now, that could come back to haunt this Trump White House if they force a case which their own review found wasn't valid. Trump's most loyal allies also expressing some doubts. The Wall Street Journal reports that Trump pushed the Attorney General to bring the charges against Comey, and that, according to the Journal reporting, whatever you think of Ms. Bondi and her conservative history, as a legal matter, to the extent that she may be looking at actual evidence or whether the case is winnable, quote, she's expressed reservations about the Comey case. This is a scandal from the DOJ to the White House. And while I know we live in a time where Donald Trump pretends everything's going exactly as he planned or just throws different words out and is accompanying with other distractions, we have indications that he knows this is bad, and it looks bad because he is misleading about, or at least disagreeing with, what voluminous reporting and his own posts online have showed. Listen to him hours ago.
I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person.
Fact check. False on the involvement. Donald Trump is involved. That's according to his own words, prior stated through his voice, through his mouth, and recently posted online. He is involved. When you are the leader of an organization, let alone the entire United States government, and you publicly say, directed at an employee like Bondi, that she should go after, probe, or get the indictments done of Comey and Schiff and others, you're involved, obviously. So he's denying it now today because the heat is on and it looks bad. The second part of what he said, that Comey's a bad person, I don't have a fact check on that. In politics, people are free to express themselves, their opinions of others. Comey has said negative things about Trump. Trump's saying negative things about him. That's both well within their free speech rights. So part two, their debate. Part one, false. The president stating blatantly false denials. The Times also reporting, separate from his public post, that Trump was demanding Bondi move faster in indicting opponents. Now, the DOJ also has a legal timeline, which, again, if you live in a world where you say, okay, Ari, I guess Trump will just do what he wants. Well, when it comes to what he says and certain things, sure, he'll try it. When it comes to actually having a case that sticks, that doesn't get tossed out or disqualified immediately, law and rules still matter. And Trump's DOJ knows that, because if they want to use the claim, or what many lawyers say is a pretext, a kind of legal lie, about why they're going after Comey, not because Trump asked for it, but because of his congressional testimony, there is a sharp deadline for that next week, after which they can't bring a case related to that issue. That expires Tuesday, 5 years to the day after Comey gave the testimony that they are now scrutinizing. But you can't just look at this in the isolation of Comey or Trump's misleading denial today, which contradicts his own recent claims in public. Take a look at the wider perspective here. We've updated a chart that could come out of any tin pot, banana republic, autocratic agenda, because as you see from the upper left, you have members of the opposition party indicted. That case goes on. The second one against the mayor, the charges were already dropped. Again, as I say, a reminder that if you just throw complete baseless charges at the wall, they won't last. Mr. Comey in the middle was already interviewed on a different case, the seashells issue, if you remember that MAGA era thing. They were making a big deal out of a social media post he did of seashells that they said was a type of threat. That was why he was interviewed by the Secret Service. He's obviously being also pursued on this other matter as they review the testimony I mentioned. If you look in the lower right, John Bolton, a lifelong Bush neocon conservative, He was considered too controversial and conservative to get confirmed in a prior administration, served under Trump. But now he's also on that critics' enemies list, along with many other people here that Trump has publicly agitated to probe or indict. This is not lawful. If they prove that the cases were only brought or indicted because Trump personally demanded it, that's selective prosecution. It's not legal in America. Judges will continue to toss it. There's also reporting that he has his sights on the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who's also in that chart I showed you. You may remember she brought a civil fraud case against Trump. And legally, I can tell you, it wasn't a perfect case. It didn't involve ever trying to jail Trump. It was civil in nature. And the system grinded forward. People heard evidence. He lost the first round, but got some better treatment on appeal over the size of the fine. That's how things work in America. And plenty of people in business or politics could end up in a civil case facing fines. But in response to that, again, this would be illegal if they indict her only for this reason. There is firm reporting in the financial press that they're still at the federal level pursuing her with one of the most controversial and blatantly partisan figures in the Trump administration. One Democrat says this is an unlawful revenge tour.
He's doing it every single day. And I mean, it grows and grows, right? I mean, he's on a revenge tour right now. And there's no question about that, whether it's obviously at the DOJ with Comey, with Attorney General James, what he tried to do with Jimmy Kimmel, it's constant.
We've always known that Donald Trump wanted to do all this because he said so, because he admitted it. He said it before he ever came into office. It was considered one of those breaches in the first presidential campaign of Donald Trump when he said to Hillary Clinton's face, quote, "You'd be in jail if I were president. I'm going to go after my opponents." This is how he campaigned. And in the first term, he tried to do some of this, although if you think back and remember, there was nothing like the chart I just showed you. There was nothing like this breadth. And so if you say, well, is the frog slowly boiling? Does the lobster know that it's in hot water, and all the other autocratic food analogies we might make, not to make you hungry if you're watching on the East Coast approaching dinner? Well, I can tell you legally the frog is already boiled. The indictments have already begun. The idea of pursuing Mr. Comey again, based on what publicly we're told is a case that Trump's own DOJ this year found baseless, is not a new breach. It is a continuation of the Banana Republic indictments that we have seen and that grind forward. The frog is dead. What do we do about it? I want to bring in former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance and Maya Wiley, former SDNY civil prosecutor and president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Joyce, I make that point tonight because we always strive in fairness to look at open cases with an open mind. But this is, according to a lot of the evidence we have, not a very open case, Joyce. It's a case that the DOJ already closed, in effect, I'm using these words loosely, not technically, because of insufficient evidence, according to the best reporting we have. How should that affect our understanding of what I call the dead frog, the fact that we are in a period of what look like improper cases?
You know, Ari, during the first Trump administration, you and I used to talk a lot about Trump's conduct that we would categorize as lawful but awful. Now we're in unlawful territory. That's the shift that we're experiencing, just whatever we are 9 months into this administration. And so when prosecutors have a case, particularly a complicated, difficult case that they're going to decline prosecution in, most offices require them to write a memo documenting that declination, so that if there's ever a question down the road, somebody can go back and say, this was the fault. This was the evidence that they didn't have, or perhaps they didn't think a crime had been committed, whatever the reason. It sounds to me, and we don't know, we're basing this on reporting, but it sounds like prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia wrote a memo declining to prosecute the case, not just because they didn't think they could get a conviction at trial, but because they didn't believe they had enough evidence to obtain an indictment, a much lower burden of proof. And so that, I think, is why we're hearing reports of Pam Bondi's hesitation. She's got experienced career prosecutors saying, there's no case here. And to go ahead in that setting would clearly be unlawful.
Maya?
Well, yes. And let's remember that we're talking about people that Donald Trump himself appointed. So these weren't people that he originally said could not be trusted or were somehow biased against him or his administration. These are his picks saying we don't think we have enough evidence. And as Joyce said, even for indictment. But I would take it one step further because yes, Donald Trump promised retribution when he ran for office. Remember that both Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, for that matter, refused to actually say that they wouldn't do his bidding when it came to retribution when they were in their confirmation hearings. So they never said they wouldn't. But I think even more importantly, what is the work that this kind of weaponization of government is trying to do? Because he also today just penned an extraordinarily dangerous and propagandistic, I say that out loud, it's propaganda, executive order that is literally calling lawful organizing and protests something that should be investigated and treated as domestic terrorism. And that is really part and parcel to what weaponizing the Department of Justice and its criminalization of his foes is for. It's whether they get James Comey or not, whether they indict him or not, whether he's convicted or not. Part of the work here that they are trying to do quite effectively as not effectively as administration, is scare people out of doing what they have a lawful right to do, which is to disagree with this administration and with Donald Trump.